Sweet potatoes, that glorious food. Let's talk a little bit about sweet potatoes, why they're so awesome, why I recommend eating them, and how they compare to my two other staple foods on this high carbohydrate, vegan, plant-based, fruit-based diet. Let's get into it. Alright, so as most of you know, I eat a high carbohydrate diet based around fruits and vegetables, you could say. At times I've done an all fruit diet. At the moment I do eat some other foods as well, and I'll talk a little bit about what those foods are and how they compare to each other. Bananas are my number one staple, okay? Meaning I eat a lot of bananas. You can check out my book, The Little Banana Book. I'll put a link to it there and in the description if you want to learn more about bananas. They are like one of the best sources of calories, sources of carbohydrate and nutrients for anyone seeking health and performance. I mean, bananas are just optimal in so many ways. Fruit in general is really awesome when it comes to human health and nutrition. However, getting that fruit, finding that high quality, ripe, enjoyable tropical fruits at all times is not necessarily always easy, depending on where you live. I mean, if you're in the tropics, sure. I'm in Norway at the moment, and for most people outside the tropics, I think this is a common situation. Yeah, you can get a lot of bananas, which is why I recommend those be one of your staple foods. But other fruits, mangoes, cherimoyas, jackfruit, durian, these fruits are not necessarily that available and not that delicious and high quality where you're at. So when I realized that this was the case after traveling the tropics for a while, I started realizing, hey, I need some more staples in my diet. A staple being a food that you rely on heavily, right? A food that you eat on a daily basis almost. I mean, you know, I do eat other foods here and there and different types of fruits and variety over time, but most of my calories for most of the year come from really three foods, and those are the foods that I'm going to talk about today, particularly. So there's the bananas, and particularly one of my other staples are sweet potatoes, okay? Sweet potatoes, and there's a third staple I have there, which I'm going to talk about at the end of this video, so stay tuned if you want to know the third staple food in my diet. Of all the different foods out there, I mean, it's obvious that we're frugivores, right? Tropical frugivores, that's our natural diet. Eating fruit, maybe some tender leaves, maybe some nuts and seeds, termites maybe, a little bit of insects. Yeah, you know, our diet would be very varied if we were in our natural environment, but generally speaking, fruit would be the mainstay of our food. Now, if you are to substitute another food for the fruit, if you are to find a food out there that could best mimic our nutritional needs and best mimic the nutrient profile of fruit, then you would, first of all, you would have to look. You couldn't look in the animal kingdom, because all animal foods are very different in terms of their composition compared to plant foods. So you have to look in the plant food kingdom, and in the plant food kingdom there are a lot of anti-nutrients in various foods, because plants, they don't want to be eaten either, right? They have these defense mechanisms, defense systems, and there are just certain chemicals, certain compounds in foods, in plant foods, that tend to irritate our digestive system, tend to cause autoimmune reactions, etc. The same is true for milk, actually, which is an animal product. It also causes a lot of immune reactions. So if you're looking in the plant kingdom, these things are things like phytic acid, tannins, lectins, etc. And so if you're looking for optimal nutrition in the plant kingdom, you really have to look to fruit, you know, tropical fruit. But as I said, what else could you eat? Well, that's where the sweet potato comes in, because roots and tubers are really they must be what is closest to fruit in terms of nutritional profile. if you have to look at all the different foods. Because let's face it, you need the calories. And you can either get your calories from carbohydrates or from fat. And if you're getting them from fat, that's less than optimal in my opinion. We thrive on a high carbohydrate diet. So essentially you're left with starches and sugars. Sugars being your fruits, easily digestible, etc. Starches being your roots and tubers. Sweet potatoes being a tuber. So they're starchy and they are quite nutritious. They don't meet the nutritional demands of the human being perfectly. And they're not as nutritious in terms of their overall profile compared to fruit. You know, something like a mango is just so epic, nutritionally speaking. Sweet potatoes, they're not quite there, but compared to almost all the different roots and tubers out there and all the different plant foods, sweet potatoes come very, very close to matching fruit nutrition. Cooked, of course. I mean, that is the sort of thing that you have to remember though, that if you're eating a strictly raw food diet, you can really only eat fruit. Fruit is the only sustainable calorie source if you're looking to eat a raw food diet, which is optimal. But if you are to include other foods because the availability of fruit is not ideal, well then you can look to the cooked starches, and sweet potato is probably then the best option. I've found in my personal experience, after eating an all fruit diet, I mean I was 100% fruitarian basically for like at least 2 years, maybe 3, before I started, you know, playing around a little bit with cooked foods. And I noticed that eating an all fruit diet feels great, digestion wise and energy wise, etc., as long as you're getting enough calories, because at times I didn't get enough calories from eating that diet because I was eating crappy fruit. That's when problems start to arise. But as long as you're getting enough calories by eating calorie dense fruits like bananas. And so when I first started including cooked sweet potatoes in my diet, I was kind of like, how's this gonna feel, you know? How's it gonna satiate me? How's it gonna digest? And I was surprised almost, because I found that, hey, it actually feels perfectly fine. I had no issues, no crazy reactions or anything like that. Anyone who tells you they get a crazy reaction from eating a sweet potato cooked, I would be skeptical, but again, we're all different, so we all have different sensitivities and strengths and weaknesses, etc. But I think overall, the cooked sweet potato is probably the most benign of all the cooked foods you can eat. And if you're including it in your diet, you will be fine. And it's almost as great as fruit, in my opinion, almost as great as fruit. And I would even go as far as to recommend that you include sweet potatoes in your diet, unless you're in the tropics getting excellent fruit, simply because it's a really, just like bananas, it's a consistent, available, high quality food staple. It's something that you can get almost anywhere, year round, fairly affordable, delicious, after it's been cooked of course, and nutritious, okay? Very little problems associated with it, digests very well, and it's fairly calorie dense, and calorie density is an essential, you know, sort of element to focus on. If you want to succeed on a healthy diet, you've got to have a certain amount of calorie density in your food. Otherwise you just end up eating huge volumes of food and not being really satiated, not really getting those calories that you need. And that's especially important if you're an athlete like I am. I do a lot of running, as most of you probably know. You can check out my running channel. I'll put a link to it here and in the description if you're interested in following my training and all that stuff. So be sure to check that channel out. So bananas and sweet potatoes, they're just like, if you have these two foods in your diet, if you base your diet around bananas, sweet potatoes, and some greens maybe if you want, maybe some other vegetables if you want, a lot of other fruits here and there if you want, sure. But if you make sure that at least, I don't know, 60 to 70% of your calories year round comes from bananas and sweet potatoes, you're gonna be really, really good, okay? Nutritionally, calorie-wise, energy-wise, easily digestible, delicious, high carbohydrate food. Sweet potatoes. Let's round up this video by introducing the last staple in my diet. I'm not gonna talk too much about it, but potatoes. Alright, potatoes are another tuber. They're not actually related to the sweet potato, so it's kind of a misnomer when you say sweet potato. It's not actually a potato, but that's okay. They're similar still. Starch from the ground, right? You gotta cook it to eat it. They can actually be problematic if you eat them raw. Lots of different types, so many different tastes. Over the course of the year, there are all different types, varieties of potatoes coming to season. I mean, I love potatoes. I do eat potatoes. They probably form, maybe 10 to 20% of my calorie intake. Bananas form about 60% of my calorie intake probably. And sweet potatoes pretty much cover the rest. And then I have some dates and some random fruits here and there and some greens and a little bit of sugar even as part of my training fuel during long runs, etc. So really that's my diet: bananas, sweet potatoes, and potatoes. And I want to encourage you to experiment with sweet potatoes. I mean, if you're thriving on a raw food diet and you got excellent fruit availability, cool. If you're feeling great and everything is good, keep doing what you're doing. And certainly a fruit diet is optimal if you can get the good stuff. But most people can't get the good stuff and struggle to get in the calories, etc. And that's where introducing some sweet potatoes and possibly potatoes. Some people react more to sweet potatoes though, because they're in the nightshade family. And for those people, sweet potatoes are safer, better option. So generally, just including some sweet potatoes in your diet will, generally speaking, improve your health if you're struggling with a raw food diet or struggling with a fruit-based diet. All right. If you're interested in coaching, I would be happy to help you out. Introducing sweet potatoes in your diet, how to cook them, how to prepare them. I don't know. Or talk just generally about diet. Maybe you want to move towards a vegan diet from whatever you're at now, or maybe you want to try an old fruit diet. We can talk about some of those things over a coaching session via Skype. There's some information and there's a link actually in the description. I'll put a link to it here as well. We can also do Patreon coaching, where it's like monthly coaching via Patreon. So there's also a link to that in the description. Make sure you subscribe and click the little bell button next to the subscribe button so you get notified when we publish a video. I hope you're having an awesome day. Eat your bananas, eat your sweet potatoes, and life is good. See ya.